What's up guys, Code Jockey here. Today we're going to be building a simple up and down counter using a combination of HTML, CSS for styling, and JavaScript for functionality. Prereqs for this project in our case is going to be installation of Visual Studio Code, and then we're going to want to have a single folder with the following three files: index.html, styles.css, and index.js. I would also highly suggest installing the Visual Studio extension called Live Server. This will allow us to see the updates to the web page as we save them. So here you go guys. Starting out, we have three empty files. We have our index.html, index.js, and our style.css. For this application, again, as we mentioned, we want to have an add, subtract, and reset value to 0 button. And then right out the gate here, we're going to start out with some boilerplate code. So boilerplate code is basically just pre-stamped code that we need for the HTML to work. You can just Google HTML5 boilerplate and you'll come up with this article. And we are going to take that, we are going to paste it straight in. And that's going to give us our doc type, language, contents of the head, which is also going to include HTML5 boilerplate. We can change this title. We're just going to call it our counter application. It already has a link reference to our styles.css document along with a reference to our script.src here, index.js, so we won't have to do that. And all of our code is going to go in the body right here. So we're going to go over here to the live server. As you can see, we're going to save this. And since we haven't put anything in the body, there still shouldn't be anything here. But our title did change to counter application. So we're good to go. Starting out, we're going to want to do a label so that we can keep track of our numbers. So we're going to do a label ID, and then we're going to give this a name. We're going to call it counter ID with 2 capital letters. And we're going to start this out at a 0 just because that's what we want to start at when we load the page. Then we're going to need 3 buttons, one for increment, decrement, and reset. So we're going to start out with our button right there, and we're going to give it an ID of increase btn, and we're going to call it increase. And then we're going to do a button ID equals decrease btn. We're going to close this off, call it decrease. And then we're going to do another button called reset btn. And we're also going to close this bad boy off just like that and call it reset. We also want to do a class. So we're going to do a class equals btn for all 3 of them. Just down the road when we want to style it with CSS, the class is going to help us out a little bit. And we're also going to have to do one more little touch to this. So class equals, we're also going to call this one btn, just to make it look a little bit cleaner for you guys. We're going to make sure these are all spaced evenly. And then to group our buttons, what we're going to do here, first we're going to do a break so we have a little bit of space between our buttons. And then we're going to also do a div, so a divider. We're going to call this divider, we're just going to give it an ID of btn box. Does that work? Yeah, that works. And we're going to paste these buttons into here so that they're all in this single button box. Just like that. Now that we're done with that, we should be good with the HTML, and I'm going to save this bad boy. And as you can see, now we have an increase, decrease, and reset button along with a number. Time to start styling our application. So as you can see, we still have our reference to index.js and style.css. So we're going to go into style.css. First thing we want to do is we want to make sure our count ID looks nice. So we're going to do a ID, which is a #, count ID. Or do we do counter? Counter ID. Counter ID, and then we're going to make this bracketed off here. We're going to do a display block, and then we want to do a text align. center. That's going to put the text in the center of our screen. And then we're going to do a font size, and we're going to do a 60px. That should be pretty big. Then font family. In our case, let's go with Franklin Gothic. Perfect. So that should be done. We're going to save that off, and boom, we have a number 0 here that is centered, a lot bigger, and with a different font. Next, we want to do our ID for the button box. So btn box, and all we want to do is center that. So our buttons, we want them to be in the center of our screen. We're just going to do a text align center. Save and refresh. There we go. Buttons are in the center. Easy peasy. And then finally the button. So our button class, we want to reference with a dot, and then we're going to do btn, which is our button class. If I'm not mistaken, btn, yep. We're okay there. And we're going to pad these a little bit. So we're going to do a 10px by 20px on the padding, font size. We're going to do, I don't know, let's do 30px, 30 pixels. Color, we want to do black. And then our background color, we want to do, how about azure? No. What are the color options we got here? Let's just do salmon. It's going to probably not be the prettiest, but it'll work. Okay. There we go. And then we want to do a border radius, so border radius 10px. And we also want to do a cursor pointer. Cursor pointer. And then we want to do a transition effect, so transition. And then we're going to do background color. And we're going to do 0.025 seconds. And that should be good there. Save. And now we got big buttons that are salmon colored. Finally, we want to do a little bit of an effect, so let's just do another btn, but we're going to do a hover effect. Curly bracket that off, and we're going to do a background color. We're going to go salmon, but instead of salmon, let's do sandy brown. So it should transition to sandy brown when we hover over. So on our right here, we got our 3 buttons and a 0. And when I hover over these guys, notice how the color of the buttons is changing to a sandy from a salmon. Notice too, when I click, nothing's happening. We have not used JavaScript to make this actually do something. So with that, we're going to move over to the index.js, and we are going to begin building out some JavaScript. So we're going to need some constants. First off, we're going to do a constant. We're going to call it decrease btn. Btn equals document.get element by id, which is what we want to reference by, and we have a name for decrease btn and semicolon. And we're just going to do the same thing for the increase and reset. Increase btn equals document.get element by id. Increase btn semicolon. Don't forget your semicolons. And then reset btn document.get element by id. Reset btn. Beautiful. We also want a constant for our label, so we're going to do a const count label, and we're going to do a document.get element by id, and we're going to do counter id. And finally, we are going to let count, which is our counter, equal 0. Now we need some functions. So to increase, we're going to do a increase button dot on click. So when we click on it, we are going to do a function, and we are going to count plus plus, which, if you guys do not know, is the same as count equals count plus 1. So it's just taking count and adding 1. But in our case, we'll do count plus plus, and then we will do a count label. Fix that up there. Equals, not that. We want to do a text content. So we're going to reference the text content. We're going to call it count, equal to count. So now when we click on this button here, we should do a count plus plus to the count label text content count. So 0 right now, we're going to do an increase, and you guys can see the number is increasing. So that is working. Now we do the same thing for the other button. So decrease btn.onClick equals function brackets count minus minus, it's just the reverse of count plus plus, label dot text content equals count. Save, and then before we test this, we're going to do the reset button. So reset btn.onClick equals function brackets count equals 0, and then we want to do a count label dot text content equals count. Done. We're going to save this, and now that we have saved this, we should be able to refresh over here, and when we click on increase, we increase. When we click on decrease, we decrease, and when we hit reset, we reset. And there you have it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. We have a working counter here that can increment, decrement, and reset to 0. Thanks.